Good evening. I am Shikha Dalmia, president of ISMA, Institute for the Study of Modern Authoritarianism. Thank you. I also edit The Unpopulist, a Substack publication devoted to defending liberalism from the rising forces of authoritarianism around the world. It is free, so you should all go to theunpopulist.net and subscribe if you already don't. And if you do, tell your friends and family to follow your wise lead. Thank you all for coming for ISMA's inaugural conference, Liberalism for the 21st Century. Before I say a few words about the purpose of this convening, I want to acknowledge the generous support provided by the Packard Foundation, Investing in US, us, Protect Democracy, and Protect Democracy. Without them, this event would not have been possible. I'd also like to thank the Hewlett Foundation for its generosity for ISMA right from its inception, as well as Stand Together Trust. Thanks are also owed to the Agora Institute and the Institute for Humane Studies for their support. And last but not least, I'd like to thank Vox, ISMA's media partner. It is extremely gratifying and encouraging that guests here today come not only from all over the US, but around the world. Folks have traveled from England, Italy, India, Iran, Bangladesh, Latin America, and many countries and continents. We have all made such extraordinary efforts to gather here. Why? Well, liberals do know how to throw a great party. Our forefather, John Stuart Mill, put liberalism on a solid footing when he defended the right of inebriation on liberty. And God knows we need that right now more than ever. Many of us sense that we are living in highly volatile times when the future of liberal democracy is on the line. Liberal democracy, the golden child of the Enlightenment, has delivered untold peace, prosperity, and moral progress over the last 250 years. Virtually everywhere it has been embraced. It has diffused religious wars and civil strife, liberated those living under arbitrary and brutal feudal hierarchies, and lifted billions and billions from poverty. It is this stunning record that allowed it to vanquish socialism and communism in the late 20th century. Yet now, merely 35 years after the collapse of the communist bloc, new ideological challenges are arising, both from the left and the right, causing much head-turning confusion. No doubt, in the future, as in the past, the left and the right will continue to take turns for the role of the primary danger of the age. There is no way of settling this question in a permanent way, but only for our own particular time and place. In that spirit, I would suggest that the primary danger to the liberal regime currently comes from the right. A world that has lived through Robespierre's reign of terror can never forget the ease with which moral fervor of good intentions can go murderously wrong. However, there is at least nothing inherently illiberal about modern progressive ends, whether it is advancing social justice for racial and sexual minorities or protecting the planet. To the contrary, in fact, we demonize such goals at the risk of not only halting, but reversing our moral progress. But there are liberal and illiberal means of accomplishing noble ends, and our progressive friends need to choose the liberal path. This path may not deliver instant results, but it delivers more enduring ones because it wins hearts and minds as it goes along. All liberal polities, thanks to their insistence on deliberation and due process, offer a sorting mechanism to separate out genuine injustices from mere fads. They minimize the collateral damage to innocent victims, thereby preventing these causes from losing legitimacy and self-destructing. The right is deeply upset that progressives today control the commanding heights of cultural institutions, but there are liberal remedies against their excesses, both in the court of law and also through the court of public opinion, and we need to have faith in them. Conservatives have already successfully used both of those mechanisms to defend religious liberties and freedom of conscience, as David French has convincingly argued and will argue again here yet tomorrow. The right, however, is in a different place altogether. It has catastrophized the threat of the left to justify an open revolt against liberalism and settle its own long-standing discontents and peeves by mustering the iron fist of the state. Various kinds of extreme reactionary ideas have sprouted in the Western right and congealed under the umbrella of national conservatism. Admittedly, the NatCon movement, as it is called, has some very smart philosophers and theorists asking probing questions about liberalism that we need to grapple with, and we will in our opening panel tomorrow. But if they were simply writing in academic journals instead of providing ammunition for the culture wars, it would be one thing. But beneath all their high political theory, what eventually emerges is majoritarian identity politics in the forms of various kinds of nationalisms: populist nationalism, ethno-nationalism, religious nationalism. And their main goal is to protect the status and interests of dominant in-groups and marginalize minority out-groups, all in the name of fighting the left. One telling sign that the NatCon movement seeks not merely to push back against woke excesses, but use them as a pretext to advance an illiberal majoritarian agenda is that there is in fact little difference between its rhetorics and goals and, say, those of Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi, with all due respect to my Hindu nationalist mother who is sitting right here. The progressives Modi is attacking as Naxalites, militant Maoists, aren't critical race theorists or trans activists demanding gender-affirming care for minors. They are fighting injustices against untouchables, women, and Muslim and Christian minorities. But if you compare the rhetoric and agenda of Hindu nationalists and Marie Le Pen's national rally and MAGA politicians, you see that there is not much difference in either kind or degree. Only the groups they target vary. These challenger ideologies, as I like to call them, have not all that much new or fresh to offer. They haven't come up with any new governing arrangements that offer an alternative, let alone a superior one to liberal democracy. They can't restart history. They can only turn back the clock by tapping into majoritarian grievances to challenge liberalism's commitment to personal liberty, toleration, pluralism, political equality, and the rule of law that holds everyone, even the most powerful person on the earth, accountable. The long-established liberal democracies that have regarded their institutions as a settled fact of history have so quickly come under the sway of these ideologies shows that liberal democracies will always remain fragile, no matter how much they deliver. Why is that? Namely, in my opinion, liberalism is not a utopian ideology that solves every human problem. That is Marxism. It just tries to do the best with flawed humans driven by a contradictory human nature that wants irreconcilable things. And humans that aren't satisfied in the trade-offs that every liberal society must make are always ready to mount a revolt, spawning challenger ideologies even in the most spectacularly successful liberal polity. The reason these ideologies are arguably more dangerous than socialism and communism, liberalism's defeated foes, is because they are sapping the confidence and legitimacy of liberal democracies from the inside. The external threat of socialism brought the country together. These ideologies are polarizing and dividing it. It is bad enough that Hungary's Viktor Orban, the self-avowed illiberal Democrat, is the role model of the neo-right. But what truly boggles the mind is that Vladimir Putin is now considered the true champion of Western civ. There is a fight between democracy and authoritarianism, but it is being waged not so much between two international power blocs, but within liberal polities themselves. Liberal democracies have started to fight back. Poland led the way last December when its liberal coalition defeated the Law and Justice Party after 5 years of institutional assaults. Last month, Prime Minister Modi saw a narrower than expected victory. This week in France, Marie Le Pen's national rally was relegated to the 3rd place, although this blood and soil party still made major gains, and Le Pen yet may become the president of France in 2027. The hapless Tories, of course, had been expected to lose to the Labour Party, and they did. But the newly formed right-wing populist anti-immigration Reform UK party obtained an impressive share of the vote. Meanwhile, the far right remains entrenched, even ascendant, in the Netherlands, Sweden, Germany, Italy, and Israel. And of course, America may well re-elect Donald Trump. We'll hear more about the state of the American right during the course of the next 2 days, but should Trump return to the Oval Office, it won't only be a disaster for liberal democracy in America, given his open contempt for institutions and norms, but also the rest of the world. Why? Because as the most eloquent success of Enlightenment liberalism, America has demonstration effects for everyone else. So if liberalism is not secure here, it may be secure nowhere. Imagine trying to convince Benjamin Netanyahu or Narendra Modi to restrain their religious extremists when Trump is in the White House ordering deportation raids and declaring open season on Muslims. Eking out narrow election victories against the Trumps and Le Pens of the world by mad last-minute political scrambling is better than losing. But only repudiating these regressive nationalisms in the marketplace of ideas will ultimately restore liberalism's footing. Every election shouldn't have existential stakes for liberal polities. Vigilance might be the price of liberty, but the need for constant hypervigilance is the sign of a polity in trouble. So what should we do? The challenger ideologies have nothing in common beyond the rejection of liberalism. They have diverse, often conflicting goals. What, after all, do integralists who want a confessional state, communitarians who blame Western individualism for destroying community and breeding alienation, and the Nietzschean Bronze Age pervert who wants the Ubermensch to rule the world have in common? Yet they have done a remarkable job of uniting and building a movement around their shared rejection of liberalism. Even as we are hosting our inaugural gathering, NatCons, just a few miles from here, are in their 5th year of convening. They meet multiple times every year in multiple cities across the world. Clearly, the high inflation hasn't cut into their travel budget. It is time for true liberals to set aside their existing policy disagreements and come together in a renewed defense of core liberal democratic values: personal freedom, openness, pluralism, toleration, and human rights, and institutions: checks and balances, separation of powers, executive restraint, and representative governance. We, after all, have something affirmative, namely liberalism, in common. It should be possible for us to jettison the old and stale left-right division and forge a new liberal-illiberal alignment. We need to offer a revitalized intellectual defense of liberalism that points out how life is, to repurpose the phrase of Thomas Hobbes, solitary, poor, nasty, brutish, and short for people living under illiberal states. And above all, we need to show how liberalism is the only governing system that can generate workable solutions with broad buy-in for the very problems that are leading its critics to reject it, both on the left and the right. A commitment to these values, as opposed to tribal identities, will have the great advantage of allowing us to recognize and respond to this threat proactively, regardless of which side of the spectrum it emerges. To begin this task, we have a roster of distinguished and politically diverse thinkers who, over the course of the next day and a half, will respond to liberalism's critics and explain why liberalism, regardless of its geographic origins, is a universally applicable idea. We will discuss electoral reforms to strengthen the foundations of liberal democracies while seeking responses to such issues as climate change, income inequality, and social justice. And we will make an affirmative and unapologetic case for liberalism.